of the universe. The Legends of Grayskull podcast.
Legends of Grayskull is a fan podcast exploring the vast worlds of He-Man and She-Ra. Join Shawn and Matthew Duke as they discuss the history and mystery of Eternia and Etheria, diving deep into all incarnations of Masters of the Universe.
Hey, you know who's back? It's the Legends of Grayskull podcast. Now that you know, let's go. Get ready for the show. It's the Legends of Grayskull podcast. Sit back and enjoy the ride. Right now.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Legends of Grayskull, the fan podcast where we discuss the history, the mystery, the magic, and mythology of He-Man, She-Ra, Eternia, Etheria, Nordor, Primus, New Adventures, Ladybird, UK, Animals, comics, mini comics, anything and everything you can think of with that Master of the Universe, Princess of Power! That remastering logo down in the corner. I'm Matthew Duch, here again with Shawn Scavarna, and we've got Skele Vader once again along for the ride. Gentlemen, how are we doing today?
Nervous as hell.
So Skele, you have obviously been on our show before. We got the new Legends of Grayskull news segment, but I don't believe, and I didn't rewatch the episode with you, I don't believe we did a remastering on the episode that you were on before.
No, so I'm new to the remastering, but I'm super stoked to be part of this. As a fan of your show, I know what this is about. So let's do this. And and as a huge fan of our subject matter today,
we can't keep straight faces when we say that today. At least Skele and I can't, because
this is gonna be good.
The least interesting for us on the totem pole, I'd imagine, of the villains for Masters of the Universe. But that's me speaking for myself.
Let's jump into that right quick here. So today we are remastering. For those of you who aren't familiar with the concept, this is something that Shawn and I used to do this quite regularly on the show, and then it kind of lost way to other segments. You need to get the creative juices need to get reset every once in a while. We actually found it quite difficult to keep doing it constantly, but it's a fun segment. What we do is we take. Mostly it'd been like a story, a mini comic or a TV episode that we felt didn't quite work. And we tried to see what we could come up with. Like, how can you improve it while staying within the parameters? For instance, the Mike Young production series, The Island. Like, it's about, the heroes being stuck on an island with crab creatures. Now, it's easy to just go like, well, let's get rid of the island. Let's get rid of the crab creatures. Let's do something completely different. That's not what remastering is about. Remastering is about staying within what we feel those original parameters are, kind of the essence of it, but reworking it in a way that we liked and that worked better for us. So I know this is obviously one of Shawn's favorite segments. And I'm being serious there. Shawn loves his remasterings.
The amount of voice messages between me and Matt doing this, not just with Masters, but in general,
right?
I'm sure this started volumes long at this point. So yeah,
which started long before it was an actual segment.
Yes,
like that's basically been one of our things privately. Is hey, what if we do this to this?
Well, I mean, that's what Masters of the Universe is all about, for me at least. And that was where all of my pleasure existed as a kid playing with these figures. Was who are these characters in my universe? Not necessarily what I'm watching on TV or reading in the mini comics either. Like, I was inventing scenarios where these characters had complicated backstories, and I know that's why some folks have strong feelings about the backstories created for classics, and also some of the backstories in Mike Young Productions 2000X, because we own those characters for who they were for us for decades. So yeah, I love this kind of discussion because it's the creative energy that's already, at least for me, embedded in Masters. So
couldn't agree more. So today, the topic of our remastering, I'm actually kind of sad, Shawn. I've got to dig a bit deeper. I might have to fire up the old laptop because I looked and looked, but I could not find our old remastering title
the
card.
logo.
So, but I'm still searching. I've still got my original laptop that we started on, so I might have to try and get that fired up again and see if I can dig that up. But
okay,
something to look forward to in future episodes, hopefully.
I will have to double check. I think I still have it on my system, so I can just email it to you if you need it.
Well, you probably had the logo, but we actually had it was actually a title card, remember?
Yeah, I remember.
But yeah, but today we are remastering The Snakemen. Snakemen were introduced originally in 1986 to the Masters of the Universe toy line. They were the newest faction of evil warrior. So they came from Preternia, the time before our current Eternian timeline. And the original figures consisted of King Hiss, along with his lackeys, Tongue Lasher, and Ratlore. It would later expand to include more Snakemen, and Cobra Khan would also join the Snakemen retroactively as a spy for Skeletor. So they were later line vintage. And they never really seemed to amount to much. I know I had them in the biggest thing I remember them in was the Battle Under Snake Man and Golden Book, which Shawn and I have reviewed on this channel. It's a lot of fun. But I think they made their biggest presence felt in the Mike Young series, where basically the second half of season 2 was almost solely dedicated to them. Then they became a giant force that was really a main villain to He-Man and the Masters. Most recently, they did show up in the CGI series as mindless zombie minions of Skeletor in the second season. So before we get into the remastering, and you guys kind of gave away the lead there, why don't you guys talk about what the Snakemen mean to you thus far in your attachment?
Shawn, you want to?
Well, so even as a kid, the concept of this was underwhelming, and I feel like part of the reason it was underwhelming was with the two factions they already started with, Skeletor and the Evil Warriors and the Horde. There was this presence to them from the get-go. There was this malevolence they brought to the table that made you go, He-Man and the Warriors have to go up against these guys? Oh my God. And they kept adding to those factions, so they were already a big faction. Like, that was one of the problems for me, was it was literally, here's a couple guys, and now they're supposed to be causing all the trouble. And it didn't amount to much for me when I was a kid. I had Tongue Lasher and I had King Hiss. And King Hiss was probably one of the weirdest toys to play with, because he was all bulky, and then you took him apart, and all of a sudden he's wimpier looking on the inside. Who would have thought? Tongue Lasher probably was my favorite, because at least his action was something fun to play with, and he visually was a little more interesting for me. 2000X brought them to a better level, because I did think the whole idea of them coming from the past, being stuck in the void and all that, and them becoming this bigger threat that now they couldn't be contained. It was almost like a plague of the Snakemen in that sense. I liked that idea, because I do like the concept of a villain that is so innumerable you actually wonder how the heroes are going to fight this. But in my opinion, the one that works better in that way is the Horde more than the Snakemen. The Horde's already set up to be that. And
just piggybacking off that right quick, that's kind of retrospectively, that's kind of one of my problems with the Mike Young Snakemen, is it really just felt like they were like the Horde stand-in.
Yeah.
Like the way they showed up and they overwhelmed, and it's like, I still enjoy those episodes, but at the same time, it's like I'd rather see that be the Horde doing that.
Absolutely.
Amen.
Absolutely. And I guess the other thing too was I wasn't the biggest fan of if you're a snake man, you should be a snake man. If you're a human, you should be a human. And the fact that they then could co-opt and do what they want, that to me was almost like, now you're playing dirty pool, because if there's somebody doing that, it should be, again, the Horde, because the Horde were about taking over things and controlling them. And the Snake Men to me were more, let's make them stealthy and let's make them almost the things that you tell kids about to make them freaked out at night, versus the Horde being this literal galactic army that was going and conquering left and right, you know? So still, I like them better in 2000X. They felt stronger in that way, but they also heralded the end of the line in the show, which then I have an automatic prejudice towards the fact I wanted that season 3 and they never gave us that. Right. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, just piggybacking off of that, that's the figures like King Hiss and Ratlore and Tongue Lasher, for example, showed up later on in the line of the original vintage toys. Whereas Cobra Khan was part of like the original lineup, at least in my memory. I could be wrong, but I'm pretty sure
wave 2 or 3 at the latest.
So those, you know, because I was really early on with the vintage figures in it, and then I started to like become interested in other things as the line progressed and became less popular. These other figures came up later. I wasn't that interested in them. And so this is me piggybacking off of what Shawn just said. When I watched the Mike Young Productions show and the Snake Men showed up, I was almost like subconsciously assuming this is the end, because I had a similar relationship with the vintage figure Snake Men that showed up. And how, you know, Tongue Lasher is part of Princess of Power, and so I just have embedded in me a feeling of doom when the Snake Men come up. I feel like we're coming to a close now, because that's how this goes. So it's a total biased, like lame approach, because there's so many cool things that I've discovered since then about the Snake Man and how there's so many possibilities therein. But I just feel like the moment they show up, it's the end of the line. And I'm just going to jump into toy territory real quick. What happened to the Snake Layer recently is just like further examples this. Like, we want it, but we don't really want it. And is this the end? Like, is this the end of Origins? You know, so
very good point.
I have that relationship with the Snake Man, and it's probably trauma based, like you know. So I have this little, but I understand it when people love them, and actually I really enjoy those episodes with the Snake Men are in Mike Young Productions. But at the same time, I wanted Horde. I wanted more of I wanted that. I didn't really want the Snake Men.
So I obviously do not have as much trauma with the Snake Men as you two do. Because for me, I mean, growing up, again, young guy out of the group, I was born in 85. So for me, it's one of those things where like She-Ra was always there. The Horde was always there. The Snake Men were just always there by the time I was chasing like the vintage stories and everything. So I got that hindsight where it's like, okay, I just remember always having that book, and so they were always there. That said, I never thought of them like on the level with the Horde or Skeletor. Like it was cool toys. I love that golden book that we've covered on the show before. But that was about it. Like I didn't really dig deep into them. Mike Young came out. I really enjoyed them there. And snakes themselves are something like I've always been terrified of snakes. I know some people love reptiles and snakes, and I'm like, no. So
I'm right there with you.
Right. To Shawn's point earlier, so they were always one of those things where it's like snakes are, especially like snake men, are a cool creature villain just because they are so inherently scary to kids and, you know, me especially. Like, you know, they're just so it's like I've always appreciated what they are, but I definitely have felt at times that like trying to put them on the level like the Horde or Skeletor is wrong. So that's kind of what prompted this. It was actually our news episode that we last did, me and Skele. We obviously Origins is getting heavy into Snakemen right now, and knowing how you two feel about the Snakemen, it got me thinking like, okay, you don't like what they've done so far. So what you know, put up or shut up. Can you guys do better? So that was the challenge that I issued to these two gentlemen with me, and let's see what we came up with. So Shawn, we're gonna start with you. So the premise behind this is there's going to be a new story with the Snakemen. You can reintroduce them however you want. So you can pull from anything that existed before. You can drop off anything that existed before. But basically, how do you reintroduce the Snakemen in a way that you feel will be successful in your eyes?
So, all right, the way that I went to it, at least, and I've always talked about how the villains of Masters of the Universe were things that as a kid they evoked nightmares to me, and that was the whole point of He-Man. Was he was the hero that would come in the darkness and fight off the things that scared me, and that's one of the reasons I love him so much. So Skeletor embodies kind of the death vibe. Hordak kind of embodies like a Dracula, I'm going to get you all under my thrall kind of a vibe, which to me is still a freaky thing.
Sure.
And I'm like, well, what is something when it comes to thinking of, I kind of went with just King Hiss as the spearhead of this. And I'm like, what makes King Hiss something that actually puts fear into me instead of him just being this almost like a wrestling looking guy with a mask on, and he has snakes under his body, under his visage. And so I was like, I kind of like the idea of there being a person in Eternia. Think of it along the lines of maybe the Shakoti episode. And I know I love Shakoti, but the whole point of that is it's an ancient character. Right. We're talking about someone who is so ancient, they don't remember how old they are. But here's the other thing. They don't remember what they looked like. They don't remember anything because through the ages, that person has changed visages over time, leading up to the time of when Prince Adam and He-Man now are a big player in the game on Eternia. This person is someone so it's almost like I can picture the sorceress talking to Adam about this and her saying, this is someone who almost is from the dawn of time, and they have the potential of swaying things to good or evil on a whim. And this is someone that she's like, I can't tell you more than that. I don't even know what they look like anymore. Even with her magic, she can't figure out who this person is. And throughout this story, it's like, I love the idea that they shed their visage, but they become something else to blend in. And they've done that for millennia, trying to keep themselves surviving on Eternia. And it's also like, what's the deal with this thing? Well, he is the last of his kind, and he's somebody that managed to escape something horrible that happened. And what happened, I kind of dig the idea of it being like a 2000X vibe with how they did it, because the mythology they incorporated was cool. Snake Mountain, I like the idea. That's Serpos, like we had in 2000X. That's something that can completely stay. Inside Serpos are Snake Mountain, I should say, are statues of all of the great warriors for evil that have ever walked Eternia. I'm going to add that into the mythology. And part of that is the fact that those were the Snake Men eventually. But here's the thing. The Snake Men also in this, one of the things that drives me nuts is the Snake Men. The snake idea in general is so limiting, even though I know there's tons of different varieties of snakes out there and species and stuff. I like the idea that they would just call them the Snakemen as an overarching term for anything reptile-esque that would join in with this group. So you could look at it as there might have been some dinosaur kind of half-breed people. You could have other things that were more lizard-esque and more, you know, whatever, frog-esque, because Tongue Lasher always struck me as more of a frog than a snake person and stuff.
In the toy version,
I think the toys have always kind of done that, where it's not Snake Man, but it's really
it's an old umbrella term for this group. So I want to go with that as being the umbrella term, but there would be like other things in this, and it would be all of these creatures who would be from like the swamps and the dark, dank areas of Eternia, that even Merman be like, I don't want to deal with this thing. Even as him being the ruler of the seas, he'd be like, you can't control this. I'm not dealing with this thing or whatever. This would be a Snakeman thing. But they would just be like, it'd almost be like this undercurrent on Eternia with these guys. They'd never raise themselves to a certain power of trying to take down things. They would always want to just maneuver in a way that it would just mess things up, and it would be undermining whatever is going on. So in a sense, they would be technically like on Skeletor's side, because they want what they want, and it's all in how do I want to put it? It's all in honor of Serpos, because they believe that is the god that they need to sacrifice to. So they are going to try to do sacrifice. They're going dark on this one. I don't want it to just be, oh, here's a guy that can do this. I love the idea that it's almost like Doctor Who with King Hiss, where it's like, you don't know what the first Doctor looked like if you weren't on the first Doctor's adventures. You just know who he is now. And throughout time, he's been all these different things. And different, maybe he was like great people on Eternia, maybe he was horrible people on Eternia, but he's never ever able to pin down, and he just sheds that next visage to become the next thing he needs to be in order to survive. And they are survivors. So he would be going to Snake Mountain, and he would actually have it. We talked about that Cobra Khan being an emissary. He would have Cobra Khan going in there to try to unleash them, but they would be the statues, and he would be making them come to life again and try to, gain back Serpos. That's why Serpos is now at rest. They have not sacrificed to Serpos in a millennia or whatever. So that's kind of, to me, it's still, you need to draw on something that freaks me out in order for me to have actual respect for some of these villains. Right. And King Hiss never had that. Yes, he's a snake. Yes, I don't like snakes. I'm freaked out by snakes. But that, to me, is just, that's a phobia. But when you start putting in, he could be this thing that you don't even know what he started as. And now he's human form. And now he's this. And that, to me, is like, oh, my God, what the hell is this thing? And having He-Man even be like, Sorceress can't even tell me much about him, because there's no actual concrete evidence. We just know of events that have happened, and he was the cause, but he can't even find the guy that did it because he doesn't look that way anymore. The
Bermuda Triangle of Masters of the Universe. And also, like, what you're saying is very similar to some ideas that I have too.
That's cool.
You're talking about this ancient evil that is difficult to identify. That reminds me of V, the television series V, where there's humans walking around, or they live. The idea that the thing that we fear is right in front of us, and we don't know how to identify it. That's certainly something that I was thinking about too in my remastering idea.
Well, let's roll right into yours then. Go ahead and take it up.
Well, I really love Shawn. What I love Shawn is saying. And my idea is sort of taking from a little bit about what you were saying, Matt, about having a fear of snakes, and thinking about Indiana Jones and that scene where they're hanging from the edge of this cavernous hole where the ark is located, and there's just snakes covering the floor, and you don't want to fall into it because it's snakes, So my idea is more leaning more into the ancient evil aspect of what the Snakemen could be, almost like the Evil Dead movies. Like there's this potential parasitic possession that can take place. The snakes are snakes, so I have this vision of Skeletor in Snake Mountain, not knowing the history. The history is mysterious. We have these events in ancient history of Eternia that are unexplainable, and somehow Skeletor unlocks this writhing bulk of snakes hidden in the crevices beneath Snake Mountain. And, you know, then it becomes clear this is what Snake Mountain is. And these snakes don't become entities, they take over living entities. Like, I like the idea of a character like Clawful being consumed by snakes and becoming Ratlore, or becoming Tongue Lashor by being wrapped up by or enveloped by these hundreds and hundreds of snakes that emerge. Sorry, go ahead. Yes.
No. I just want to throw this in here real quick. I mean, what you're saying actually makes me feel like Snake Mountain is Unicron from Transformers the movie.
Yeah.
And so Snake Mountain creates them in their in the visage of Snake Mountain to make the Snake Men, because they've been loitering there and they've been like squatters basically.
Yeah.
Which I that's an actual cool way to do it too. I like that. Hidden
in plain sight. I mean, and that's like, I love that Skeletor is evil and I love that Hordak is evil, but to me the scariest thing is this the thing we can't see and the thing we can't control. That's, you've got a sewage leak under your house. You don't know how it's like, rotting the foundation of your house. And like that sort of like this, like the snakes of ancient history are gathering beneath Snake Mountain, just waiting to be unleashed. Like the Deadites in Evil Dead, you chant the words and suddenly we're all getting possessed by these things. But I like the idea of the Snake Men. I would prefer if the Snake Men were absolutely terrifying, like uncontrollable, unknown to us, coming out of the ground. You can't stop them. They're taking us over. They're possessing us. Heroes are being affected. I mean, this plays into the whole design of King Hiss, really, which is a fairly normal looking, kind of happy looking dude. You take off his skin and he's filled with snakes. And like, that's the kind of direction of terror that I think this could go, except showing the letting the previous versions of characters play into what the characters would become once they've been possessed or overcome by snakes. And so like a character like Terror might be actually Trapjaw taken over by the snakes. King Hiss could have been like Randor taken over by the snakes. Skeletor is running from them. I just love the image of Skeletor like getting the heck out of there. But I like this. I like the idea of ancient evil unleashed by some mistake or happenstance in Snake Mountain. Skeletor being at fault of this idea of this thing.
I dig it. More than I like I said, I wasn't a fan of how they did that in the show, because it just made, here's Man-at-Arms as a snake, or here's Teela as a snake.
Exactly.
And I'm not buying an alternate version of these characters just because they're a snake form. But I actually thought of something similar to what you're saying, and I was like, no, I didn't like the idea of co-opting the villains. But the more I think about it, the more you talk about it, I'm like, if it's like a Transformers the movie where some survive and they're a faction, but you
Yes.
change some of the other ones. That is compelling to me, because now all of a sudden people that were on the table aren't on the table anymore for Skeletor or the heroes, but now they've become this new breed of villain. That would be way better than I remember in my thinking going, I don't want them to possess them. No, I like that though.
To extend this idea into toy territory, I had a sort of intense conversation with the guy that commissioned the Snake Mountain. He's a big fan of the Snakemen, and we were talking about the mistakes made by Mattel in unveiling the Snake Lair the way that they did, in that it's not a transforming playset.
Right.
It doesn't make sense to have a Snake Lair not be a set that can transform into like the Filmation Snake Mountain, or another version, like an amped up version of Snake Mountain. It doesn't make sense to have them be separate entities, because that's not, we really, at least from my perspective, Snake Mountain belonged to the Snakemen, so that is the Snake Lair, you know.
Right.
So that's sort of the same idea of the transformation that can occur. Snake Mountain can return to belonging to the Snakemen once the snakes writhe up from underneath and take over. And to have the ability to go back and forth. And I know Mike Young Productions touched on a lot of this, but I want it to be terrifying. I mean, I want them to switch the lens of the camera. I'm doing air quotes, the camera, you know, so that we have a change in lighting. We have a change in mood and music. And it's scary when this arises from the depths.
And to your point, it's you're getting into not only the Snakemen just being terrifying creatures, but like the idea. I mean, it's almost like ancient spirit possession. It's like the poltergeist for Masters.
Yeah, exactly.
Yep.
Like that's a whole new level of, and that's a way to go. Like, oh, they were stuck in the wine cellar in Snake Mountain for eons.
Yes.
No, like they were legitimately wiped out, and something went wrong and awakened all these spirits with unfinished business.
I love that idea.
Actually, I really kind of, you guys are both on the same wavelength, oddly enough, and we did not have any discussions prior.
No.
We all just did our own thing, but like, and I know you like the idea of like Skeletor triggering it, but I really think if anything, if Shawn's King Hiss actually survived for eons by taking over other people's bodies and everything, and then he's the one who leads Skeletor to bring back the rest of the Snakemen spirits. Like, I think your two ideas like flow right into each other.
I agree.
Where Shawn's King Hiss, like he survived all that time on his own by keep jumping from body to body.
I love that. And
now it's time, you know, with Eternia. And again, that sneaky snake kind of thing where like he has found a way to infiltrate Skeletor's, you know, stronghold. He's put himself in a position. He sees with the current state of Eternia, with them battling Skeletor, potentially the Horde, like King Hiss is like he's a tactician. He's waiting his time. He's like, this is it. It's the most fractured it's ever been. They're all too busy fighting each other. This is our time to rise up again.
I love that. That's very like mirroring what's going on in the United States right now too. And it's like this. There's a King Hiss behind the scenes playing us all.
The views of Skele Vader do not necessarily reflect the views of the Legends of Graceful podcast, the USA, or any of its subsidiaries. No.
But you know, it's like you wonder why are we fighting each other? Is something else prompting this? And that's why Shawn's idea is amazing, because and also it plays into what I was talking about, the hidden evil, the thing that we can't see that could potentially be prompting all all things getting weird on in Eternia. But I just love Shawn's idea about King Hiss being this ever-changing entity, this person that we see but can't see, and the metaphor is great, shedding the skin just like a snake.
By the time they're revealed, it's too late.
It's too late.
Like they're there already, and now we have this to deal with, and it still gives because there's a lot of people who love the Snake Men, and it still gets you there to where you can have, the Masters versus the Snake Men in full force, but without just presenting them as a horde ripoff or anything like that, and giving them a different. That's the other thing. I don't even want to see big battles with the Snake Men. I want that, even like when they're fighting, it's always like these sneak attacks and this subterfuge and everything. Like, I don't want them to be, here's 10 million Snake Men versus 10 million Royal Guard. Like, no, that's not how they fight. They strike from the shadows. It's Rantlor, from a deep cave. You don't see him. He lunges out and he attacks you. Like, that's how they are.
It's like on Reddit, for instance, there's a subreddit where it's like, show me where the snake is in this photo, and you are standing there, you're looking at this thing for 20 minutes going, I can't find this thing. And then all of a sudden it's like, oh, it's right there. And it's like, it took me 20 minutes. The thing could have took me out literally 30 seconds into me looking at that thing. So that's how they need to be. They need to be these stealth and subterfuge kind of characters. And the thing that I think works when you combine these ideas is you have this eons of millennia or eons of history character, and he's gotten to the point where he's transmorphed himself so many times that's why he's this kind of guy that's just not sure of what he's supposed to do. He does these things. He does it, and he does them because he just feels like that's part of who I am. I enjoy shaking it up with societies, and some will crumble and some will rise from this or whatever. And he's kind of that character in a sense. And even like the Cosmic Enforcers would be like, he does stuff we need to stop and we can't find him. I think that would be interesting too, where even on that level, there's like a red alert, but you have him all of a sudden, like he's standing at Snake Mountain, and all through his life, he's heard a voice in his mind talking to him and swaying him to do these things. But it finally gets to the point of, you need to come home or something along those lines. And he doesn't know where home is, and he's asking people where his home is. People don't know. They're not telling him anything. He finally gets to Snake Mountain, and this voice is loudest at Snake Mountain, and it's just like it's like literally making his brain vibrate when it talks. And he gets into it, and it's when Skeletor and the Evil Warriors are off doing something else, and he then all of a sudden it comes back to him, and he does whatever it is to unleash the snakes. That's cool. Wait, when Skeletor gets back, then all of a sudden these things start coming out of the woodwork after him. It's literally a horror movie in your own house for the villains.
That's the poltergeist thing that Matt was talking about, like
Amityville too.
Amityville.
You get this house, and all of a sudden your basement's literally a pathway to hell. Oh my god!
Well, here's the other thing I would like to throw out to you guys that I would like to see change about the Snake Men going forward. I don't want their end goal to be world domination or annihilation. Like we've got Skeletor wants to rule, and Skeletor wants the power of Grayskull. The Horde wants to wipe everything in service to the Horde, Like, we don't need another world dominating threat. I want these guys just to lean into their animalistic nature, and they're just creatures of chaos. And that's the other thing that it's hard, because you don't really, like, they don't have like a necessary objective. Like, I wouldn't even put them after Grayskull necessarily. Like, they're there to feed, and they're there to sow terror and horror, and like on top of them being these like cold calculated strike from the depth, like but to have them just be another, like, I want the palace and I want Grayskull,
Yeah.
you know, like we've got that already. So
exactly.
have these guys just be so hard to fight because of their tactics, because of the terrible creatures they are, and because, you know, like they're the ones who would kill 100 of their own guys just so their king can have a good feast tonight.
Yeah,
It's more of like an infection you can't control.
Right.
That's why I really I was drawn to, when I was thinking about this, I was thinking about the Evil Dead movies, because you don't know, there's no way to control this. And to what purpose? Like, just to create chaos,
Right.
and terror. And
It's
and
in
even
it's their nature. That's why
it's in their nature. The Deadites are just trying to, excuse my language, I won't even say it. They're trying to F with us, right? They're trying to F with us.
Trying to mess
And that's like, and it's not even like, it's just their purpose is to break up normalcy. And that's like a mindless purpose too, which is different than Skeletor and Hordak. This is not an intellectual purpose. This is not an ego-driven purpose. This is an animalistic purpose.
Yes.
That is uncontrollable. And I really do think that's what we would need in a progression of storytelling, an additional villain that's not just like all the others. That's just not a bunch of goofy guys trying to get the power. So oh gosh, what was I going to say? I had a good point. Now I've lost it. Anyways, but yeah, we want something different.
Exactly.
I was gonna compare it to the Joker is what I was gonna do. Like the Joker as a villain evolved into this entity that it was hard to identify why he was doing things, just to create chaos, to be and to create anarchy, disrupt the norm, disrupt what's going on. And so I think that's kind of what we would need from that faction. You pointed it out, Matt, like that's maybe part of the reason why I've never really glommed onto them as a viable enemy, because they're really kind of after similar things that Hordak and Skeletor are after.
Right. It's we've done this before.
Exactly.
Unfortunately, it's been done better before. Like so.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, so tying them into just that kind of survive. And honestly, any series that they're introduced in, I don't even need them to be like the focus. They're just like you said, this kind of infection that pops up here and there. And it's even worse because you never know where they're going to pop up. You can't predict where or when. They get hungry, they find a weak village, and they feast on them. And you're kind of fighting it off, you know, after it's already. I think that infection thing is like the best analogy for them. Like, you can only treat it after the symptoms are shown. So it's this thing where the masters are always behind the 8 ball with these guys, and they're always just trying to catch up.
Are we saying that the Snakemen really should be the xenomorphs of Masters of the Universe?
I was getting to that. I want to see an episode where Tila and Rio Blast are on a space shuttle and they realize that they took off with Snakemen in the hole, and they've got to spend the whole time trying to not die.
Oh, I love that so much. Wait, who's gonna get implanted by Snakemen egg?
Technically, Rio Blast can't because his chest already opens.
Oh, that's right. So we gotta have a third character in there. We gotta have. I don't want to see Ram Man go that way.
No, not Ram Man, but what about like Matt's gonna hate me for this, but what about like Cyclone or someone like that?
I'm just gonna say that actually.
It's like, and I hate to say it against Snout Spout or somebody where it's time, give him some moments, but then maybe he got the chest buster that happens to him instead. But
I mean, let's be honest, it's gonna be Orko. Like it's gonna be the inquisitive
legs, but they're snake legs now. That's
he comes right out of the circle on his chest, the O on his chest.
Then another one pops out of his hat.
Yeah, totally.
So the one thing too that I liked from 2000X, and I think I would also want to keep in this, but do it in a way where it's much more creepy, is the idea that once the Snake Men are activated, one of the first places they want to go, and this is different than we said about they're not going for Grayskull.
Yeah,
they go for Grayskull for a different reason. They go to Grayskull because they want to kill the sorceress, and that's it. So, and I know in 2000X they gave her the venom that she was slowly dying. In this case, they just take her out, and there's no time for the heroes to go, oh, we can try to save her. And so right then it's that whole the death of Optimus Prime moment in this, which I'm going to that a lot in this episode.
That's okay. That's all right. But that's a good place to go.
That, you know, like He-Man, like he's asking Sorceress for help, and she's not replying to him through the telepathy anymore. He's like, we got to get to Grayskull. Something's going on. He gets there. She's dead on the floor, and he doesn't know what happened. But there is that, like, I kind of dig the idea, because, like, the other problem with the Snake Men, at least in 2000X, was we had all of these variants of the heroes that then were like, oh, great, this is going to fight the Snake Men. Awesome. The thing about it for me in this then becomes He-Man can't get possessed if he has the power going on the whole time. So almost 24/7, he literally has to stay He-Man. But what's he going to do for everybody else that's with him? So that then becomes a thing of similar to what we saw in the CGI cartoon, for instance, where it is him going, I need to give you all the power so that all of you can survive this, because they are literally just warriors otherwise. They aren't amped up power-wise. So each of them gets some of the power of Grayskull for this. And that is like, that shows how bad the deck is stacked against them at this point, that they need Teela, Man at Arms, everybody to have the power, because otherwise they will get possessed and they will fall, and they will probably they won't be able to escape the thrall of the Snake Man at that point. There's no sorceress to help them, possibly Zodak. I wouldn't mind seeing Teela maybe become the sorceress because of this story. But her not knowing what to do from the get-go, and her eventually, through having the power, maybe she's tweaking it as she works with it, and she's realizing she's tapping into things that help her become the sorceress eventually. But I do like the idea, you're taking away the mystical guide for He-Man, you're taking away a conduit to the power of Grayskull by taking her out, even though he's still able to use it. And I love that King Hiss would just be like, I could care less if you have the power of Grayskull. I have the power of subterfuge. I can do whatever I want. I can disconnect you from that if I choose. I just didn't choose to yet, you know? And have it be this threat that even Adam's like, could he do that to me? And actually maybe he does later on and stuff. And it's like all these little mind games that King Hiss could do to the heroes, I think would be really, really effective.
I like that idea. I'm going to counter that just a little bit by saying this might be an opportunity for He-Man to have to no longer be able to rely on the Masters, to no longer be able to rely on anyone, because he's the only one who can do this. And that's sort of like that's like the Ripley character in Alien. And this is a devastating plague that's hitting Eternia, and He-Man's this gives He-Man an opportunity maybe to be the only one. Really, at the end of the day, all the heroes get their time in the spotlight in the stories that we're used to. But in this particular situation, it's only He-Man that can get us out of this situation alive.
I dig that too.
And the fear of becoming Adam, the fear of retreating back to the Adam form, he can't do that, because he'll then be a victim. and you know, and then it becomes sort of like revelation, like who do we lose,
Right.
Which is, you know, no one wants to lose characters, but you know, it just, you know, with devastation comes the sacrifice.
Yeah, and it even has that vibe of The Thing.
Yeah, totally.
I mean, like, imagine, I'm actually picturing there's a whole village on fire. He-Man's sitting on a hill, and he's exhausted, and maybe there's somebody there with him, and it's the whole, they're looking at each other, and they're not 100% sure if the other is what they say they are. And it's like, I know we're riffing a lot on horror movies and stuff, but this is working for me on so many levels. Of the Snake Men should make you always want to look over your shoulder and wonder what's happening. You know, like up until this point, it's all been straightforward. Skeletor wants Grayskull. The Horde wants to just, you know, conquer Eternia. And in this case, it's literally like the thing behind you could be the thing that ends up getting you. And it could be something that you didn't even expect. And I love that about it. And Mattel, what the hell were you thinking doing this line without talking to us first? Because these are better ideas to me.
Oh, wait, I also have to say this. Cobra Khan is the...
Here I am telling Mattel what to do with a line from the...
Hey, we all want to tell Mattel what to do, you know? we all want to contribute our ideas. But here's my final idea with this. Cobra Khan is the one that actually saves all of Eternia. Cobra Khan uses his ability to take down King Hiss because he has to have a moment of realization that this thing that he's a part of is no good. And he's, you know,
I like it.
So, I don't know. I kind of love this. I kind of love, like, now I'm back on the Snake Man train.
Our Snake Man train, the remastered Snake Man train.
Hey,
I'm
call that
there too.
I call that remastered right there. We're staying true. And honestly, a lot of that is I mean, when you really break that down, we're not really reinventing the wheel. Like they've done in Eternity War, the DC comic, they did a lot of that with King Hiss, where he's jumping from body to body. The CGI series did them coming back as zombie spirits. Like, so, and this is what we love about remastering. Sometimes you can take these concepts that might not have landed and you just got to tweak some stuff, look at it from a fresh perspective. I think the biggest part of it is just doing what you can to keep them from being a Horde or Skeletor clone. I think that's definitely where they failed in the 80s was they needed them to just be, here's the next faction without actually giving them anything to set them apart from the other ones. So.
The hunger aspect of them is scarier to me. Like even when they talked about, you know, Zodak's brother getting eaten, that all of a sudden I'm like, what? Like that was the automatic, like, I like these guys better than the 80s because now they're eating people. That's crazy. And that was the one thing that made me go, okay, 2000X Snake Men, I give you cred because you're doing stuff that I wouldn't have expected them to go to versus Filmation. You would have never heard that at all. And they would have never gone to it in the mini comics and stuff. So yeah, I love this idea of the hunger and the chaos they make in order to get what they want in that situation. They cause enough chaos. People are running every which way. Nobody knows where they're going. They can pick people off left and right, and that's dinner for the night. You know,
right? And nobody trusts each other because of the shape-shifting aspect.
Real quick, I just wanted to say the thing that I didn't realize I did by accident by this character, the way that I set it up, is I do think from a toy perspective, it would be fun to go, here's the various versions of this character throughout them so they could keep making a character, but you could have whichever version that is your King Hiss then as throughout the ages of Eternia. So he could start maybe looking more like a demon or something, and he slowly becomes a man version like the version we know. And like you could have how many toys? He could have so many variants, just like He-Man and Skeletor did, and even Hordak.
And
so
Shawn's,
right there,
Shawn's officially working for Mattel now. All he's thinking about is variants. How can we pump out variants?
Oh, I wish.
Well, and also not to, again, I am jumping in and coming with a counter, Shawn, but you know, for us collectors, this is also a money saving option. all of our characters that we have already are and can be King Hiss.
Yeah.
You know, we've and plus the everything that we have, all the toys that have been released, and let's just go back to the vintage line. All the toys that were released in the vintage line can play into this because of the shape shifting aspect, because of the different types of because of the unpredictability of this infectious problem.
Yeah.
You can just, folks, you can just use your imagination.
Exactly. Yeah, mine would have been Mechaneck right from the get-go, just because of extending that. I was just been like, Mechaneck's my King Hiss until I get the King Hiss figure. You know, that
there you go. There you go.
There is something really crazy about He-Man looks at Mechaneck, and Mechaneck's like neck is coming out, and he's talking in a different manner, and it's He-Man's like, what is going on with you? And then all of a sudden he's talking about, you know, the chaos, the carnage must continue, or something like that, and have them go, I got nothing on this. I'm gonna go home now.
Yeah, that's terrifying. I mean,
exactly. Yeah,
I would love that. That'd be a good. This would be a good Halloween episode. You know, this is what Kevin Smith should do: is produce a Halloween episode of Revolution, and then we'll call it Reckoning or something.
Yeah.
And it's a Halloween, a series of 3 episodes that all come out around Halloween about the Snakemen, the possession of the Snakemen. That would be cool.
I love it.
I would be completely fine. All he has to say is, you know, like in the credits, just inspired by 3 guys on a podcast. I'll be like, I'm one of those 3.
You hear that, Kevin? We're talking to you, buddy.
We've got it. All right, guys, I think that is Remastered. Thank you, everybody who tuned in. I hope you enjoyed it as much as we did. Drop a comment down below. Let us know what you think about our ideas. If you like them, if you hate them, we'd love to hear from you either way. If you've got better ideas, throw them down there. Like, share, subscribe, and until next time, watch out for them snake bites.
Oh, come on.